Another conversation that merits looking into, but didn't end up happening, was Federal Environment Minister Mr. Guilbeault shutting down
Oh,
the opportunity to meet with a major oil sands company during his visit. Canada's Environment Minister was in Alberta this week speaking to a handful of stakeholders and politicians about decarbonization and clean energy. But Minister Steven Guilbeault turned down a request for a meeting with major oil and gas company CEOs during the trip, amid industry anxiety about federal policies and timelines to reduce emissions. The Pathways Alliance, a consortium of companies representing 95% of oil sands production, asked for time with the minister during his uh, visit to Calgary on Tuesday and Wednesday. This says it all. He was meeting with stakeholders, shareholders, politicians, saying, "Oh, we need to reduce this and carbon reduction, blah blah blah, 2035." And then the people who make all of the energy and could potentially have one of the biggest impacts on this conversation were saying, "Let's meet to discuss," and he's not willing to sit down with them. How much of this sort of climate jargon is really just showing off for shareholders and voters, and how much of it do you think is inclined towards actually changing something?
first of all, it's just an hypocrite because, okay, so you take your big car SUV and you travel all across like the world, and afterwards you don't want to meet the people who permit you to do so because I'm sorry, the plane are not electric and your car is not electric also. So don't say to me that you don't want to meet them because like you want to virtue signal that you are for the climate change and we should not encourage oil and gas company, but I'm sorry, you need them.
Yeah. And I mean, I take a note, oil companies. I've talked to Brian Jean about this in our exclusive interview recently. I've asked Danielle Smith this when she was actually pursuing the leadership. But these oil companies, they're continuing to play the game and pander and adhere to the rhetoric of this government, thinking that if they play ball, they're going to get to sit at the table. But look at this: you have 95% of the production capacity. Saying, "Hey, can we have like 15, 20 minutes of your time?" He's like, "No, thanks. I have to go meet with some politicians and stakeholders." That's wild. It's absolutely inconceivable that someone, if your actual intention was to sort of move the oil sector forward in a more environmental fashion, have a tangible impact, keep these companies who are tense and maybe concerned about 2035 targets, to keep them at the table and working productively, you take this meeting. What this says is that the Justin Trudeau government doesn't want to work with these companies and doesn't particularly care, despite the fact that they're bending the knee, kowtowing, and basically engaging in the language that this uh, government has very intentionally and in Orwellian fashion set. They're saying, "This is the way we're going to have this conversation. You're going to be apologizing and groveling. And then when you do that, we're not even going to meet you at the table." I hope, for one, and we can jump to our next tweet here, that these governments start to realize they need to, or these companies rather, realize that they need to start sort of putting their weight behind, or at least collaborating with governments and parties that are willing to support the industries that have helped make Canada wealthy, particularly Alberta wealthy. And by extension, we send quite a bit of that over to your province, among others. But Danielle Smith finally learning a lesson from Quebec, I think. It's funny, Quebec can advocate for themselves, and there seems to be very little criticism, whether it be from Trudeau, from whether it be from mainstream media, because they still sort of need those votes. They don't feel like they need Alberta's votes anymore. But Danielle Smith is not backing down. I had a bit of concern, but she's been pretty much a stalwart as far as pushing back. Um, this tweet from her covering the 2035 net zero cost, which she has said is impossible, uh, valuated at $1.7 trillion or $61,000 per taxpayer. That is a troubling amount. Not to mention, is it troubling, and it'd be devastating, but it's not tenable. Experts and many people on Danielle Smith's team and Danielle Smith herself, they're not against this. They're saying, listen, by 2050, we're going to have the capacity to do this. It might just naturally unfold anyways as technology progresses. But 2035 is a Chinese Communist leap forward manifesto type move that would destroy our industries. It's analogous to, you can see places where they're asking people not to charge their cars, their electric cars, because the grid can't handle it. They don't have enough power, while bringing in restrictions and banning fuel-based cars. It's completely it's completely not possible. Danielle Smith says in her tweet, if the federal government chooses to forge ahead recklessly with their 2035 net zero agenda, Canada's middle and low income families will pay an extraordinary price, not to mention the loss of businesses and jobs. This ties into what you just said, Alexa. We have people who they probably can afford a few Teslas easily. They're jetting across
Mhm.
the country every day. They take these massive SUV excursion vehicles. I don't know if you've seen how many vehicles are in Justin Trudeau's uh like convoy whenever he goes anywhere. It makes a presidential convoy look modest. And they're telling us we need to smarten up. What do you think of the double standard about among these politicians?
It's always double standard. It's like, don't eat meat, but I will eat meat. Don't use like a gas car or oil car because it's not good for climate change when they are using it themselves. Of course, like they don't have the time to stop at, I don't know, like a charging point for 45 minutes to charge a car. It's why they are using the most reliable source of energy for a car. That's
Yeah.
mean oil, petrol. It's what we
Yeah.
need, and and it's always been like that. But I'm wondering how long it will take for Justin Trudeau to now stigmatize people who use gas car and like people work in that
Yeah.
industry, like what he did for the unvaccinated people.
Yeah. A fringe minority, extremist outliers who we should not tolerate driving their fuel powered cars. Yeah, how far are we from that? The other thing that I find so funny too is like these people, like Trudeau has like nannies and a whole team and everything. Meanwhile, those of us out here in the world with kids, he thinks we can have our kids parked for 45 minutes or standing on the side of the road in winter in Alberta waiting for our vehicle to charge. But these people who have a whole team around them, they can't possibly use that technology because it's not feasible. There's a disconnect there. Listen, once we have renewable energy, and if we were to get massive dams, or if we were to get like nuclear energy, and there was a super abundance of electricity, and the mileage range on electric vehicles got higher, the towing capacity and the sort of speed attainability, not to mention the self-driving benefits, which I understand there's concerns with self-driving too, but if you look at all the benefits of electric, once it becomes tenable, once the energy is renewable, once all those things are in place, they probably will take over, but it has to happen organically. Governments forcing it, they likely set these things back, if anything. No government initiative, other than maybe grants that help the technology in the very beginning, has advanced electric cars in any practical way. Elon Musk making cool Teslas that people want to drive and competing on the open market. That is what made electric cars sort of viable, and that's why you see them on the road. It has nothing to do with government policies, and frankly, like I said, I think government policies, if anything, will set them back. One of the things we
Mhm.
touched on there. Sorry, go ahead if you have something on that as well.
No, it's just because they want us to turn completely electric. But
Yeah,
right now in Quebec, we know that we lost one contract with it was Volkswagen because we didn't have enough power to give to them. So we lost that. So they went to another province. And also, they were also talking to reduce our electricity usage as like maybe washing during the night or other like option like that. And now they want to electrify everything, car, home, industry, everything. And we know that the cost will rise to a point because now we don't have enough energy. They don't want to build more dam because the dam is not good for the environment. And they are saying, but we probably need to turn to solar or the air power, wind power. I'm sorry, but this is not reliable enough to
yeah,
sustain like as much people as that. So people would think that if they have an electric car, will save them money. Oh, I have like a surprise for you. Probably in the future, your electricity bill will rise up so high that you will pay more to charge your car and to live your life than just going to the gas station and put some gas in your car.
Yeah, 100%. That is what will happen if this is forced forward. The other thing that really doesn't make any sense is like eventually solar panels will probably get to the point, maybe not in a place that's winter half the year, but I know Calgary is one of the sunniest cities. So you look at a place like Calgary, it is a place where this could potentially work, but you don't need to, and this is the problem, is this is the way the government thinks of this stuff. They're like, in the name of the environment, we're going to clear cut a forest in order to plant solar farms. Well, there's roofs right across every single city already in place, and you don't need to cut down and clear cut forests in order to implement solar panels. In fact, once they become viable and once they become a cost savings, and if the government's actually willing, I know in some cases they're trying to tax people for electricity from their own solar panels, but if you can get unlimited electricity from very efficient panels on your own roof, we're on the threshold. I do know people who have solar panels on their roof and they're starting to actually get a bit of money back. It's starting to pay for itself. Once that technology, as we said, openly advances and is good enough that it's economically viable, it's going to compete. But if you look at anything government funded, look at the cell phone from when you were like in high school until this, compare that to the cell phone now. That's the open market. By comparison, if you look at a space shuttle, there's NASA's still using space shuttles from like 1974. They haven't changed. They're almost the same technology. SpaceX, different story. But anything that seems to get into that government vein, it doesn't evolve, it doesn't change. Things on the free market, there's competition. If you can get better for less money, you're going to get picked up.